Under the bold and visionary leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, India has already taken tremendous actions and initiatives to tackle the problem of climate change, including inter alia, setting up of International Solar Alliance, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, raising the domestic renewable energy target to 450 gigawatt by 2030, and continuing efforts to decouple its emissions from economic growth. As a United Nations Champions of the Earth awardee for policy leadership, the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji is a statesman who not only recognizes, knows and understands the enormous benefits of climate action, but also he acts with enormous energy to make this change. And this leadership today is more necessary than ever, not only for India, but for the whole world.
आज भारत को ये संकल्प लेना होगा कि हम आजादी के 100 साल होने से पहले भारत को एनर्जी इंडिपेंडेंट बनाएंगे। भारत आज जो भी कार्य कर रहा है उसमें सबसे बड़ा लक्ष्य है जो भारत को क्लाइमेट के क्षेत्र में क्वांटम जंप देने वाला है, वो है ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन का क्षेत्र। ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन के क्षेत्र के लक्ष्य की प्राप्ति के लिए मैं आज इस तिरंगे की साक्षी में नेशनल हाइड्रोजन मिशन की घोषणा कर रहा हूं। अमृत नई
as a precursor to the COP26 scheduled during November 2021 at Glasgow. The International Summit is bringing together policymakers, regulators, Nobel laureates, industry titans, experts, scientists, and over 25,000 stakeholders from across the world to discussions on all related topics, propelling India as a key player in the global hydrogen economy. The summit agenda includes release of a special knowledge book titled Self-Reliant India, Harnessing the Power of Hydrogen by the Indo-Norwegian Alliance, the launch of the National Hydrogen Portal, recommendations on the formation of an International Hydrogen Alliance similar to the International Solar Alliance, and the setting up of centers of universities across India that will assist in capacity building through a strong knowledge base and R&D. Fostering global collaboration in establishing sustainable routes for production, storage, transportation, distribution of hydrogen. The summit would also provide a host of commercial opportunities, including securing joint venture, technology, supply chain, or international funding partners for production, storage, transportation and distribution of hydrogen. A catalytic moment presenting these next-generation clean energy opportunities. The summit is dedicated to achieving the Honorable Prime Minister's recently announced target of achieving 100% self-reliance in energy by 2047.
Good day to all of you. Welcome to this session on Make in India Hydrogen Production Technologies. Firstly, I thank the organization for inviting me to moderate this very important topic on hydrogen with the emphasis on production. I think it's one of the most important thing which the context should be really looked at. And more importantly, the Make in India phrase, which has been the hydrogen production technology, also makes it very interesting to see how we will be able to take these things forward. Primarily, I would like to introduce myself. I'm a faculty member at the Center for Sustainable Technologies and currently the chair of Interdisciplinary Center for Energy Research at Indian Institute of Science. For somebody who is not aware of institute, probably this is a premier institute at with the major emphasis on masters and PhD programs in the area of science and engineering. And we are rated one of the top most institution in India and also well recognized across the globe. Just to introduce my area of research, I work in the area of solid, liquid and gaseous fuel combustion, develop technologies on various aspects and transferred across these technologies across the globe to meet various range of energy devices. Currently, my work supports the topic of today's panel discussion on Make in India, but I use the concept of thermochemical conversion of biomass to produce hydrogen, and especially with the stringent requirement of PEM fuel cell applications. And this is in a very advanced stage of demonstration at a reasonably large scale. I think this is the background to what I have been really looking at. And especially when we come to this panel discussion itself, today we have distinguished group of 8 experts, including the keynote speaker from finances to academics, and with industry experts having a range of, I should say, experience, which translates right from the fossil fuel sector as well as with experience in the renewable energy sectors from different countries. It's a very good mix wherein this also shows how important the hydrogen economy is across the globe. The panelists will speak on a range of topics associated with the title of today's discussion. I expect that they will try to address the broad question with respect to hydrogen roadmap that needs to be answered today, while India is moving into the bigger term, which was there on the country's context called hydrogen economy. And recently, the Prime Minister also announced a mission mode program on the Independence Day. This makes much more important for us to see how we will be able to support various initiatives which the government of India is taking. And I assure you that this meeting and the experts' opinion would have a long-standing, I should say, insight into a range of activity that are going to be scheduled by various agencies in this country and also from other countries too. And India being what it is with respect to various other aspects in terms of hydrogen economy and the kind of push what we are getting from various agencies, probably I think it also would be a good attraction for cross-pollination or collaborative research across the countries. As a part of this panel discussion, the speaker or the presenting expert would take about 78 minutes, followed with 1 or 2 immediate questions which would be there within the panel. At the end, we can have a question answer sessions based on whatever inputs we receive from the audience. Without further ado, I would like to briefly introduce the keynote speaker for this panel. And we have Mrs. Soni, Vice President, Invest India. She has an experience in terms of handling financial services, including the infrastructure, financing, and treasury, kind of thing which has led into bringing in a huge amount of funds in various sectors like infrastructure, real estate, energy verticals at Invest India. And she's also been involved in getting into the sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and private equity to invest in India. I think that's something very important for most of us who have been looking at technology to be moved into a new space. And it's also heartening to see that she has been interacting with government agency and private sector across various things. Maybe I would request Ms. Prerna, while she's speaking about, also bring insights into the government of India's initiative on green hydrogen. And you may also provide insight into how do we really look at the hydrogen economy, production, looking at grants, demonstration, and pilot plant. Over to you, Mrs. Prerna.
Thank you so much, Professor. So when I start talking about Make in India to augment the opportunities in green hydrogen, I think the first aspect that I would want to bring in is Make in India. In 2014, when the Make in India initiative was started, that was when manufacturing's contribution to our GDP was around 16%, and our target was to take it up to 25%. Come 2020, we introduced another aspect, another campaign called Atmanirbhar Bharat. That means self-reliant India. This came from a lot of learnings that India has been able to generate as a country post the pandemic. And the idea was to make India a global manufacturing destination and become an integral part of the global supply chain. Now, there's a study which has been done by Deloitte, which says that 80% of the contributors to the GDP of India by 2050 will, of course, include areas such as services, manufacturing, retail, tourism, construction, transportation. And all of these together will lead to significant amount of climate-related losses. As a country, as you know, we have a target of reaching 5 trillion. But more so, and what is more important, that if you flip the coin and then look at the other side of this growth, India is focused on sustainability and resilience building and a growth which is supported and funded by green energy. As a country, when we are progressing towards decarbonization and towards moving towards this sustainable growth, we've been exploring all new areas to achieve the goals of COP22, of course, and reduce carbon emissions and increase the non-fossil mix in the fuels within the country. In fact, India is one of the only countries in G20 which is on track to meet its climate change mitigation commitments of 2 degrees Celsius under the 2015 Paris Agreement. Now, when we talk about this decarbonization commitment that India has been able to bring about for itself and the ambitious target that we have of 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, India actually is in the middle of the largest renewable energy expansion, wherein from 2015 to 2022, our renewable energy has actually gone up by 80%. Very recently, we crossed a milestone of 100 gigawatts of renewable energy. Now, to take it forward, there are new initiatives and new incentives that are being given out by the government of India to make sure that there is more renewable energy, more solar and more wind that gets manufactured in India and more power that gets generated within the country. We, of course, know about the PLI scheme. We know about the ALMM list, the identified lists for both solar and wind manufacturers. There's an imposition of the basic custom duty, and all of this together is going to work into getting more renewable energy in the country. As Professor Dasapa was very rightly saying right now, the Honorable Prime Minister has laid down a vision for India to be energy independent by 2047. For this, we cannot rely only on wind, solar, and other sources of renewable energy. One key area which is going to play a very, very vital role is going to be green hydrogen. As per a report that was done by CEEW, it is estimated that India's hydrogen demand will be 1 million ton by 2030, which is going to need an investment of over $44 billion. We, of course, know of the National Hydrogen Mission that was announced on the Independence Day, after which there has been a lot of key interest and a lot of influx of information that is coming in on green hydrogen in the country. In fact, there is a new perception that has already been built within the government, and the government is working on implementation of a mandatory purchase obligation, similar to what we saw for renewable energy, to make sure that there is usage of hydrogen in certain sectors, and we will expect guidelines to come out on this. Now, when we talk about green hydrogen, and of course, we have a lot of experts with us today talking about the technology and the requirements, but essentially there are 2 main things that are needed for supply of green hydrogen production, which is energy from green sources and electrolyzers. Now, we've already spoken about the fact that India has been able to reach a 100 gigawatt milestone in the generation of renewable energy in India. But what is more interesting is that India has a vast potential of over 1,000 gigawatts of renewable energy across all sectors. India, in fact, is moving at such a fast pace at renewable energy deployment in the country that there is a business prospect that we might be able to generate business of over $20 billion per year for renewable energy. IEA and World Bank, in fact, did a report which says that India's efficient and cost-friendly renewable energy sources will bring down the cost incentive in the last 5 years. Across the country already. In fact, there is a production linked incentive of over $2.5 billion, which is focused on batteries and battery storage. Now, with this adoption of renewable energy, with the focus on electric vehicles, with the kind of work that is happening in the country on batteries, we already have skilled workforce. We already have a very ambient manufacturing culture. We already have ease of procurement of raw material, which all together can come in and make India for the manufacturing of electrolyzers. This manufacturing of electrolyzers that can potentially happen in the country, considering we already have this learning from battery and we already have that supply chain, along with the falling tariffs of renewable energy in a country like India, can certainly help in reducing the price gap between green and gray hydrogen. In fact, what is very interesting, and I think this is one of the biggest skills that India has as a country, is that there is a lot of R&D that is already happening within pioneer institutes such as DRDO, BARC, all looking at economical hydrogen production technologies in the country. I think one area which is very, very interesting here is the learnings that we can get from other sources of renewable energy. And the two sources, of course, that are very prevalent are both solar and wind. When we started solar power generation, even actually more than 90% of our components for solar were coming in from China. In the case of wind, as a matter of fact, more than 90% of the required equipment was being manufactured within the country. And we have seen the kind of difficulties that we faced with solar, be it the quality of the component that we were getting in, or be it the fact that insurance for these equipments was also happening from the country of the manufacturer, which meant in the case of default or defects, it was very, very difficult to get compensation for such products. And these learnings, especially along with the fact that wind that way have been very easy and smooth going sector, considering the significant amount of manufacturing, tells us that manufacturing of electrolyzers is going to be a key area for a country like India. We've seen that 17 large electrolyzer production plants are actually being looked at all across the world already. In countries like US, UK, Canada, Australia are really stepping on the gun to be able to start manufacturing these very, very soon. Now, when we talk about hydrogen and when we talk about green hydrogen in particular, then of course the supply side that we are talking about, but what is very important for investors who are looking at it is to understand the kind of demand that India will have which will influence their decision to be able to come and start investing in India, to do partnerships in India, and to start building technologies for India. It is anticipated that the demand for green hydrogen in India is going to go up from the current level of 6 MT to 28 MT by 2050. In addition, India has come up with certain very interesting solutions, which, when put together, will make usage of hydrogen very interesting. Something similar to blending of hydrogen with CNG. In fact, I know we will listen to this, but IOCL, along with Delhi, has already started implementation of 50 buses and deployment of 50 buses in Delhi, which is going to see a blend of hydrogen and CNG, with over 70% going of it being hydrogen. Apart from that, there are a lot of institutes and organizations which are working on fuel cell technologies. There is a lot of parallel work happening on R&D and pilot projects, which are going to look at commercialization of fuel technologies for mobility, which again is going to take in a lot of green hydrogen. Again, IEA did a report which says that India will have 30% of total vehicles by 2050 being fuel cell vehicles, which talks about the kind of requirements that India will have for green hydrogen in the future, and the kind of impetus that India will put on this. I think the seriousness of the country is very evident from the fact that we are putting in mandatory procurement of green hydrogen in certain sectors in the future. India has also had seen a few firsts in green hydrogen already. We already spoke about the buses which are being commissioned, the pilot plant that has been commissioned. In addition, IOCL is building India's first green hydrogen power plant in Mathura refinery. NTPC has set up India's first hydrogen fueling station in Leh. We know about India's first electrolyzer manufacturing plant, which has already been set up in Bangalore. And the fact that India is also developing fuel cell-based three-wheelers, which are all going to be powered from hydrogen. When we talk about the roadmap, and I will pass it on to Professor Dasappa after this, but when we talk about the roadmap for green hydrogen in a country like India, on the short term, we certainly see a usage of green hydrogen for mobility, for fuel cells, for
we are in now. We'll just get back to these points at the end. I would R&D center in the IOC complex in Faridabad. Dr. Ramkumar has been involved in the science and technology related to all the fossil fuel activity which has been taking place over the last 3 decades in the hydrocarbon sector, and especially in the lubricant technology, refinery process and research teams, which includes catalyst development. And very important thing is Indian Oil itself as a group has been advocating hydrogen for the last decade plus in a very focused manner. And I would request Dr. Ramkumar to really look at the kind of work they have been doing in terms of bringing in initiatives on green hydrogen. And okay, sorry for this. And everybody knows that they have taken a very bold step in terms of bringing in 15 PEM fuel cell based transport into the fold. They have aspects with respect to hydrogen production. We already know that you have also done quite a
I hope my slides are visible. And half. In fact, India's first hydrogen refueling station it has been commissioned and it is in operation for the past almost 18 years from our own R&D center. So we are working on along the value chain and along the value chain of the hydrogen economy, starting from production.
Is there a sound issue? I cannot hear.
Yeah, there must be something. We just there's some audio issue.
Yeah, there is no audio.
Dr. Ram. Yeah, you are on this slide. That's it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm sorry for this technical glitch. There is some bandwidth related problem. So what I'm saying is that while we had gone ahead and announced that from our Mathura refinery will be the first one to meet the impending obligation of green hydrogen, we announced that by 2025 or so, the entire Mathura refinery operating on green hydrogen, and we are now under intense deliberation of which technology need to be adopted for this, for realizing this ambition. And of course, right now, as Dr. Ashish Lele was mentioning, that one has to go through the electrolyzer route. But having said that, as an R&D, we have been working on various pathways for hydrogen. Steam methane reforming is anyway there, and hyphenating steam methane reforming with appropriate carbon capture technology will turn this gray hydrogen into blue. And I think it is going to be extremely economical. The blue hydrogen, even after hyphenating with carbon capture, this will be one of the most economical pathways. But nevertheless, country wants that we should straight away pole vault to green hydrogen from gray hydrogen. So industry is definitely weighing what kind of economic challenge that associated in this proposition. There is methanol reforming, we are working, coal gasification, we are working, water splitting, photo electrochemical water splitting. Even in electrolysis, I think we are setting up a demo unit of 95 nm cube total, where all the three electrolytic pathways we are just going to install at one single place, PEM, alkaline electrolyzer, and SOEC, knowing fully well the relative merits and relative limitations of each of these pathways. But one single pathway, as Professor Dasappa in his initial comments, what he made, we are heavily betting on biomass gasification. Though right now it is in TRL 5 level, along with Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, what Professor Dasappa was mentioning, we are working on this oxy-steam gasification of biomass to produce green hydrogen, and it is a fuel cell grade hydrogen at that point of time. And our initial estimate, depending on the availability of the biomass in certain geographies, our calculations indicate, given the yields of this particular pathway is anywhere between 1.5 to 2.5 US dollars per kg. My optimism stems from the fact in this particular technology is, Professor Dasappa would bear with me, that while the conventional gasification route will give you around 5% of yield per ton of biomass, the pathway that we are pursuing along with IISc is anywhere between 9 to 10%. That itself is a big difference, and that is going to be translated along with the superior purification technologies will reach us to this target price range what we are working. So most likely mid 2022, our demonstration unit on this new pathway along with the new purification technology developed in collaboration with Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Professor Dasappa's group will be erected and it will be in place. So on electrolyzer technology, while I fully endorse the imperatives that have been brought about by Dr. Ashish Lele, we are also wondering, there is a lot of gap between the hype versus reality. Now I'm actually scanning. Give me 1 minute. I need to tell this to this audience. While the draft hydrogen roadmap indicates that the electrolyzer cost today is available at around $800 per kilowatt hour to thousand US dollars per kilowatt hour. Our actual budgetary quotes, what we received for a sizable scale of electrolyzer, is nowhere less than $1,500 US per kilowatt hour. And there is a great debate whether it is PEM or alkaline or the SOEC. SOEC is still in TRL 3 or 4, so it cannot be. It is not ready for commercial installation. So the choice between alkaline and PEM, we have now learned that if there is a constancy of renewable power, if anybody can assure a constancy of bracket today, with the landed power cost, please mark my words, landed, quote unquote, landed power cost, and the realistic storage mechanisms are adopted, probably I think this $4 band will come down to at least $2 to $3, and $2 to $3 would still be doable on an industrial scale. And I don't know, I would like to respond to Dr. Lille that 5 to 6 hours hydrogen in a refining scenario, we need 24/7 hydrogen. So if the production is on just I'll take only 1 minute. We have an array of initiatives that we have launched on hydrogen application area. Have also estimated, even if physical blending of gray or blue or green hydrogen into the natural gas, what kind of cost calculations cost to 3 rupees per 3 rupees per kilometer total cost of operation. If you fuel cell buses of 12-meter long, that is fairly larger buses, and these buses will run hydrogen. And the third one is the electrolytic pathway. Fourth one is the benchmark SMR gray hydrogen. So I think to Agra and then to Gujarat. Indian Railways is approaching us to run a train and some of the city buses. Of inducting hydrogen into the mainstream energy pie. With this initial comments, I rest here and would like to be more than happy to comment on any further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramkumar. Maybe we'll get back to you towards the end in case we find some time. It would be nice to get additional inputs from you. Now, I would request Dr. Eriksson, who wants to have another, also heads the hydrogen initiatives over there, looking into the European wind and solar businesses. While Statkraft is one of those hydropower based units which is being looking into large scale generation of renewable energy, we would like to just see that how all the sources of energies they have been looking at can really look at carbon neutralities in the European. Over to you, Mr. Eriksson.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the nice introduction. I will try to share my screen just a second. So let's see. Can you see my screen now? Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully you can. And I think from my perspective, India, so that's the background. Just a couple of words on the company first. Let's see if I can get it to change. Yes. So Statkraft, you might not be familiar with it, but we are the largest producer of renewable power in Europe, but we also have activities on a global scale, but in some few selected markets outside of Europe, and India is of course one of them, one of these keys. The question, well, you know probably the answer to that. Why is a renewable company like Statkraft interested in hydrogen? Well, you see, we have a quite large production basis, and it's mainly hydropower, but we are going into to a larger and larger extent solar and wind, where we see large opportunities. And according to our analysis, we see that there will be a tremendous increase in production of renewable energy in the world going forward, and this different purposes. First of all, it will replace fossil fuels in the power production. It will go into new uses like mobility. That's one of the key usage areas. And it will be used to produce hydrogen. And in our view, it's clear that it's not possible to reach the targets of the Paris Agreement without the use of hydrogen. And we believe it has a specific role in the hard to abate sectors like heavy transport on land and sea, and also within industry. And the industry example I will revert a bit back to a bit later in the presentation. But as a feedstock to chemical industry like ammonia, it has lots of potential, and that's something to revert to. In our analysis, hydrogen will make out for 20 to 25% of the emission reductions over the period until 2050. So it's an important factor to reach the targets. And I think many of the esteemed colleagues already have touched upon the point, why is this happening? And basically, it's due to a falling cost of renewables. And it's been lots of talk about hydrogen for many decades, as most of you know, I guess. But why will it happen now? Well, the cost of renewables has dropped tremendously, and the political focus is so high. So we really In addition, as also has been mentioned before, it's of course the largest source of cost for producing hydrogen. So by this big cost fall will also benefit hydrogen production. And there's been lots of good numbers on the cost developments on electrolyzers, and also potential there. So I will not dwell too much on that. We also see that there has been a cost fall within the two key technologies now, alkaline and PEM, continue into the future, maybe 60 to 80% more over the next 8-9 years until 2030. And then we envisage that by 2030, it will compete with gray hydrogen, or blue for that matter, with CCS at normal price ranges for power and gas. So you see around 50 euros per ton, and now the cost of CO2 in the market now is above 60. So it's we can get there, and it can happen quite fast. Yes, and my topic for the talk today is actually ammonia. So I'll take it one step further. And why is ammonia interesting? I know you're of course aware of this, and we, according to our calculations, it's vastly cheaper to produce, store, and transport ammonia compared to liquid hydrogen. So both the production cost liquid needs to go down to minus 253, etc. There's also an existing opportunity, both seen from, what should we say, a Norwegian perspective, where we have quite good amounts of reasonable renewable energy available, but that's of course also an opportunity for India. And it depends a bit on what you want to use it for. If it goes directly into use as ammonia, then of course it's easier to be competitive. If you have to compare and crack it back to hydrogen and then back to power, then of course the cost becomes high, but in some markets it will even be able to compete there. So having access to reasonably able to produce both hydrogen and ammonia could be a core competitive skill. Or this ammonia plant that's owned by Yara currently is currently using gray hydrogen, but will now be using green hydrogen in its production process. And the plan is that this project will start up by the end of 2026. So in summary, I would say that we need hydrogen to meet the Paris goals. We believe it will be competitive by 2030, and for some purposes even before, provide pricing. We think ammonia is a very promising zero-emission fuel for shipping. And yes, I think this is an opportunity for Norway, as we see, but also for India. So that was what I planned to say. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. I think you have brought in the perspective of ammonia as a carrier for hydrogen. I think it's an interesting thing. Even in India, one is looking at green fertilizers. We just have to look at some of those comparisons, what you have done and how it's going to be effective for Indian conditions. Thank you very much. The green hydrogen with an immediate requirement of the blue hydrogen, and coming from the perspective with respect to the so-called emissions, maybe I would also see if there is anything which you could add on to the carbon footprint, which the IPCC reports recently indicate that the carbon footprint would be greater than either using natural gas when we want to convert it to a blue hydrogen, maybe some along this direction. Over to you, Dr. Desikan.
Sure. Thank you very much. Can everybody see my screen? I'm assuming you can.
Please go ahead. Yeah, we can see.
Thanks. So I just want to first thank the organizers for inviting Equinor to this esteemed forum. It's really a pleasure and quite an honor, actually, to present Equinor's journey and plans ahead in such an esteemed forum. So just to share a little bit about the company, we are headquartered in Norway. We are Norway's national oil company. Majority of the shareholder of the company is the Norwegian state. Majority of our production portfolio comes from the Norwegian continental. but we also have a coming as an energy industry, have pledged to be net zero by 2050. And one of the renewables, we started to realize that yes, it is actually possible to decarbonize the energy industry. But if you start spreading the energy consumption globally between electrical or electrons as well as molecules, where we are today is that the 20% of energy consumption is spread around electrons and about 80% of the energy consumption is with molecules. Even with a sustainable development scenario that IEA came up with right now, in 2040, we will still have 60%. When we start looking at the molecular sector by the use of natural gas that is abundantly available, and that's where blue hydrogen can play a very strong role. Dr. Ramakumar actually talked about the production cost of green hydrogen as it stands today. This is a report that came out again from IEA in May 2021. The cost of green hydrogen, even in the European landscape, where offshore wind is quite readily available, at a fairly competitive cost. The cost of green hydrogen production still is in a range of 2.5 to about 6.5 euros per kilogram. So about $7 to $8 a kilogram it can be. So it's clearly a cost challenge and clearly a function of how aggressively and quickly the cost of renewables as well as the electrolyzer technology can come down. But we as a company firmly believe that with robust carbon pricing, the cost of blue hydrogen can come down fairly quickly. So I talked about the 80-20 today, or 60-40 electrons and molecules distribution.
Recording in progress.
who have also now, stated net zero goals, which will basically get us down to sort of, sorry about that. Basically they have the net zero goals now, which will basically ensure.
We'll be happy to
Recording
share
in
some of our
progress.
views on the electrolysis technology is available today, and obviously it's been touched upon on some of the previous speakers as well. And I will also present some project cases that we are working on, so we can see the differences in the configuration that we have to do from project to project, so that one electrolyzer technology will not be a perfect match for all solutions. So I'm not sure if you can see my screen now. Yes, good. So
yes, please go ahead.
Yes, so as mentioned, Greenstart has got our vision of making green happen, and when it comes to hydrogen, then obviously that means making green hydrogen happen. So we'll see if I can push through the slides. So just first a brief overview of the, just see if I can hide the screen. There we go. Just for the understanding of the Norwegian energy mix, if you look at the historic perspective, we also got some presentation there that we have had hydropower electricity for nearly 100 years, and it's early in this period it was also used for electrolysis for ammonia production. So we're sort of going back into history, and we've got a base load of hydropower in Norway that makes it very attractive when it comes to a steady 24/7 electricity availability. We had a tremendous period when we had discovery of oil and gas in the North Sea. We are now sort of beyond peak oil and gas, and oil and gas will be phased out sooner or later in Norway. How long this period will last is yet to know, but there is a strong drive now to convert to green energy. So if the other Norwegian companies in this room, Statkraft is a representative for the historic hydropower, and Statoil, or now Equinor, is the representative for the oil and gas. Then Greenstart is one of the new players that is a pure play green energy company, focusing on, but working together with the more established companies. So yes, and obviously our goal is to have a zero emission society as soon as possible, and we believe that Norway can be a showcase for the rest of the world with our limited population and highly advanced technological society. So into the green hydrogen situation in Norway, what we see is that having a strong national grid, we have a unique opportunity to establish large-scale hydrogen production facilities centrally placed near the good grid connections. And in these situations, we can produce hydrogen at a very low cost. I will get back to the prices that we are looking into a bit later. But we also see that transport cost quickly becomes an issue. So distributing it to the different project sites. So we believe that there will be a mix of distributed solutions close to the customer and a large scale centralized production. And when it comes to Greenstat, our role in the value chain is that we want to be an owner and operator of hydrogen production facilities. We will buy the best available technology that is commercially proven at any time, because our goal is purely to provide the market with the cheapest possible and green hydrogen. So we will also sort of challenge the power companies and the grid companies on providing us with the best tariffs possible. So some of the project cases that showcases the differences in how we have to configure our systems is this is a typical industrial site far up north in Norway in a place called Glomfjord. And historically they had one of Europe's largest electrolyzer factories here. It was around 135 megawatts installed capacity, and it was in operation until the early 90s when it was shut down because the price of green hydrogen was sort of outcompeted by gray hydrogen. But now, as many have mentioned, now this situation is again about to shift. And we are looking at a production when we are going to re-establish this production at up to 100 megawatt. And in this location, we have a good connection so that we have availability of more than 100 megawatt of steady power 24/7, which is a very good situation. And the reason why we're developing this project now is that we are tendering for the first commercially ferry route that has a tender where the requirement is liquid hydrogen, and it's going to be operational from 2025, meaning that we have to start building the site in already next year. And it's going to be around 5 tons per day, maybe a little bit more, of liquefied hydrogen. So our role in the project will be to produce the gaseous hydrogen and then sell it to our partner in this project, who is Air Liquide, that will liquefy the hydrogen and then sell it to the ship owners. And another example of a more distributed system is there is this huge market for hydrogen when it comes to workboats in the aquaculture industry, which is a huge industry in Norway. And in this project, we also see that there is a strong need for the byproducts from the hydrogen production, oxygen and heat, which is a good way of using the resources. So, but this is a totally different setup than the large scale production. Another project is we in the middle of Norway in the county called Trøndelag, where they have a lot of locked in hydropower, which could be in a way similar to what we see in India, where you have locked in wind and solar, and then hydrogen is seen as one of the ways to utilize this energy. And we are looking in particular to use it for trains converted from diesel to hydrogen. And we are working on a heavy duty truck segment especially partnering with Hyundai Hydrogen Mobility. And at the moment, there is a huge project in Switzerland where they are phasing in up to 1,600 trucks. And in this business case, they are looking at a pay-per-kilometer kind of solution, so that the provider of sort of the value chain solutions are sort of selling hydrogen as a transport as a service. And that's also a model that we would look into in Norway. We are looking at different energy hubs where we will both have hydrogen production and distribution centers. And we're also looking at industrial projects. This is a project in Tyssedal, but we are working together with Tysir Titanium, where they're looking at replacing coal with hydrogen in their production. Here Statkraft also has a good dialogue with Tysir, and we're really hoping to get this project realized. A last project area is that we are now looking at the large-scale offshore production, because now we are in the phase of developing offshore wind projects in Norway, and hydrogen is one way of utilizing that energy. And here we also have a different way of configuring the electrolyzer systems. So then the question that everyone is asking at the moment is, which electrolyzer technology is the correct one? And the answer is that you need to assess your application, your geographical location, and then you have to configure your system based on that. But obviously there are mainly two main area solutions, alkaline and PEM. But we see that solid oxide electrolyzers are also coming into the market now, being even more energy efficient. And we have an analysis team that has done a lot of work on figuring out in which application these different solutions are suited, and when they are not. So in these slide bars, you will see some indications of which solutions that are better for transport. When you go to the off-grid solutions, you can see that a PEM solution normally would be better than an alkaline. But this is not. This is also indications, and must be taken with caution. So the key issue, and several others have been touching that as well, is the configuration. We have to look at the whole value chain and from the demand side, and then we have to do a cost analysis and figure out where to optimize, and where do we do the storage, if we need any storage. Would that be in the hydrogen side? Would it be in the electricity side? And other ways of optimizing this. And this is so important for us that we have set up a dedicated team in a dedicated company that is also selling services to others. And I would just strongly recommend that you go to our website, greenside.no, where our team has made a series of analysis on different aspects of how to choose the correct electrolyzer. So, and one last slide from me would be that we need to get data on different electrolyzer solutions, so that we actually know which one will operate with the best results over a long period of time. So now we are now working together with a sustainable energy catapult center located on the west coast of Norway, where we have now made an investment decision in a hydrogen production unit that will be a PEM electrolyzer that will be operating for and producing hydrogen both for the center and for other markets. But we will also set up a rig where we can test different electrolyzer solutions next to each other, and then get operational experiences from those systems over time. So there it's probably a bit disappointing for many that we can't really give the exact answers. And now I forgot to jump into the pricing issue. And we had a good meeting with Indian Oil earlier this week here in Delhi, and we had a very good conversation with Rama Kumar and his team, and we support their targets of reaching prices down to $2 per kilo. And actually, we see that in the most optimized cases, if you look at the Glomfuel large-scale production site, if we have a normal electricity price in Norway, that would be around 25 dollar cents, then we could reach a price that is very close to 20 or $2 per kilo. But that's in an optimal case. Normally it would be more like between $3 and $4. So we still have a way to go. So that was probably it for me. So thank you so much for having me on this session.
Thank you very much for providing insights into how you have been looking at green hydrogen in completeness. Okay, I would like to take this opportunity to invite Mr. Rajat, the CEO of Acme Solarite, and the company itself has been really looking at solar portfolio for a long time, and they have been able to put about 5 gigawatts, both which are operational and development programs. And Mr. Rajat himself has an experience in the power sector, both renewable as well as the conventional sectors, and he also comes with a background of some oil and gas sectors earlier too, with respect to finance and executions of large-scale programs. I think his cumulative infrastructure and solar assets development crosses about $400 million. I think it would be nice to hear from him with respect to how India is geared up to look at Atmanirbhar, the kind of activities what we are envisaging on the current solar program itself, and when we get into the hydrogen mission kind of programs with the kind of custom duties and aspects related to
Mr. Moni se baat karo.
Aspects related to solar cells which are coming up as a new paradigm shift. I would like him to look at these aspects. Over to you, Mr. Rajat.
Thank you, Professor Dasappa, for a nice introduction. I'm quite privileged to be in the company of people with so much of experience in their domain. So with your permission, sir, I would take a slightly different route in presenting. I don't have a presentation. I'll maybe use 8 or 9 minutes to talk. And if with permission of everyone in the speech, I'll be a bit provocative in my speech to kind of make the discussion a bit more interesting. So few things, it's my duty to just introduce my company. Not everyone may be aware of this. So Acme, as you said, is one of the largest solar-only developer in India. But more important and more relevant to this discussion is that we have already invested in a green hydrogen and ammonia plant. In fact, I just want to appraise with a lot of pride that we have already physically completed what we believe is world's first single location integrated solar, hydrogen and ammonia, green ammonia plant, which is in the place of Bikaner. So we had started hydrogen production last month, and this month we are expecting the ammonia to also start coming out from that plant. And we are expecting a very senior level dignitary to also dedicate that plant to the nation. So now a few disclosures. We as a company and I as an individual, we are not hedging our bets. We have already chosen our horse. We believe green is the future. We believe initially it will be alkaline electrolyzer in the future. And third, we believe very, very clearly that the immediate market is in ammonia, right? There is a use case which is already there. And so a lot of our comments, my commentary would be given this leap of faith that we have already taken into this these things. Now, few things which are very important, right? So, and I'll talk more from a development and commercial experience, not the technical aspects. coming together of the stars aligning from green hydrogen and green ammonia is not a technological breakthrough. Why? Solar has now been around for 10 years, prices have been declining. The electrolysis technology has been there for multiple decades. Similar for the ammonia loop or the Haber-Bosch process, as we know that. So this all have been there for multiple years. It is humankind's, it was unfortunate that humankind 100 years back chose the carbon route for hydrogen to be a carrier for hydrogen and not the nitrogen or some other route, right? Technically, all of us know that energy is in hydrogen. For some reason, someone discovered oil in Pennsylvania and then in Middle East, and we all went the oil and gas route because that was easier thing or a lazy thing to do. And we never kind of allowed chemistry to build on and allow ammonia and other things to come back. And maybe 100 years down the line, we are realizing what damage it has caused and we are trying to course correct. All of us in this conferences are probably part of the solution and not part of the problem. So to that extent, we should all take pride. Now, few things which are important. The major discussion that I hear in speaking circuits or in the papers is that hydrogen is very costly. We are still few years away from it becoming commercial. So let me throw a counter proposition. It is not a matter of time we reach $2 to a kg hydrogen. We are already there, right? And why do I say so? Let us, as someone mentioned, the 60% of the cost is renewable cost, right? And if you want $2 to a kg hydrogen, it's a simple back calculation which doesn't require too much of scientific rigor. Anyone would know that 55 units of electricity is required to generate 1 kg of hydrogen. Just take 2 cents to a unit power, that means $1.1 is the cost of the power, and balance you just put the capital cost for your electrolyzer component, or in case you're making ammonia component. So we are not very far from $2 benchmark, which seems to be the tipping point. But how do you get the 2 cents to a kilowatt power, right? And again, the equation is simple. You need to have renewable resources which are intense enough in that particular area where you are locating, right? For example, in India, we have Rajasthan, which has good renewable sources, among the good renewable sources of solar globally. But then there are other locations like, for example, Oman, where we are setting up a large 2,400 tons per day plant, where even at today's solar irradiance, at today's cost, we are at 2 cents to a kilowatt hour power price. Once you have that power price equation solved, then everything else starts. Dollars to a kilowatt hour, if you produce ammonia, we will end up producing ammonia at a rate equivalent around $16 to $17 to an MMBTU. And check what, that's the price even today. A lot of our companies, even in India, is paying for the LNG cargoes that they import. So the points I'm trying to make in an animated fashion, that this is not a technology for analysis, getting paralysis by analysis. Mixed with coal or other sources. So once that is commercialized, which is 4 years from now, 3 to 4 years from now, again, so many years, hydrogen has been around for so many years. Second thing which is important, while all of us talk about technology, let me throw you a counter proposition, and this is with respect to Make in India. What if I say that the choice to sell in dollars, as we allow for oil, as we allow for gas, or as we allow for ammonia, get down the cost of money to 4%, and again we are back to what every other competing fuel is, right? So the expansion and the intervention has to be more policy driven. technology is either doing its job or already in the process of getting us where we are. So this has to be more policy driven, mandate driven, and entrepreneur driven. And that is why I'm happy that large companies, including myself and our company, and even larger ones like Reliance and Adani's, have already seen, smelled the coffee, and they are actually now investing money into this. Now, last couple of minutes I'll take for the interest of your audience, that we as a company have taken a heuristic approach, that we will learn through our experiences and then make modification. So this is what we did in our Bikaner plant, which is physically complete. This is what we are doing in the Oman plant, and eventually in India plant. That will. So few things. First question is, so solar versus wind is a question which keeps coming at various stages, right? So I think our view is categorical, having evaluated all places globally for wind resource and solar resource. Eventually the hydrogen will be driven by solar and not necessarily by wind. Wind will play its part, but our projection is that 80% of the green energy would be through solar route and not wind route. The reason is very simple, that at today's cost, solar is significantly cheaper. There is no way to get wind to a rate of 2 cents to a dollar, 2 cents to a unit, that I can foresee in next few years. That is why it will be solar driven. Second learning, whether you do PEM or alkaline electrolyzer, right? A lot of the only negative about alkaline electrolyzer, as was presented earlier, was whether it can react fast in an off-grid kind of a situation. Again, our categorical learning is that alkaline with certain modification in your solar configuration can be a good solution today, being very, very cost effective. There is a 2:1 or maybe higher cost gap between alkaline and PEM. So that is our second learning that we are doing. Third important element. There are two sets of companies who are approaching green hydrogen ammonia. One is your traditional oil and gas companies who are from their side, and then there are power company like our who are approaching this thing. What will be differentiator is how frugal are you in your engineering and designing the project when you integrate them. And as someone was mentioning, that in India we have been successful in driving down the cost of solar, not only because the module prices have come down, that is a major contributor, but also because the frugality of the engineering that Indians have kind of learned to do, because we are always cost constrained and cost sensitive. So how frugal human resource capital. Again, this year that is another opportunity in the context of Atmanirbhar Bharat, whether it is to serve India or for projects globally that we have developed. Settled in the favor of green, right? So I have full respect for people who are vouching for blue, and they come with very, very solid arguments. I cannot deny that. But as someone who important, it is important that more entrepreneurial efforts happen in sector. This is real, this is getting big, and this is
and Professor Yadav to this, and thanks for being patient until now. Professor Yadav is the topmost highly accomplished engineering scientist in India, and he's been involved in a range of activities, right from to look at the green chemistry and also look at the engineering aspect of these processes, catalyst, chemical engineering, a range of activity which has contributed into the energy sector significantly. And we also know his involvement in the ICT OEC process, which is getting into a commercial angle as of now. I would request Yadav to share his thought process of how that process, what has been developed to look at what could be achieved the Indian context. Over to you, Professor Yadav.
Thank you so much, Professor, for as it happens, I used to say this in the school that if your last name starts with Y, you are the last person to present. So there is no issue on that. But it was very interesting, discussion, panel discussion, and the presentations. So what I'm going to talk about is what we have done in ICT. And so I will start with this particular slide. I wrote this article last year, and it has been 500 reads for this, where we compared the choice between crude oil, biomass, and hydrogen with regard to sustainability. So the problem what we are facing is because we are based on carbon-based economy, and that you have the fossil fuel and you have the renewable fuel. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So the biorefinery part, which is talked a lot these days, I am saying it should be without biofuel. Why? And I'm going to tell you that also. If you look at the carbon dioxide emissions now, there's something like 35 gigatons of carbon dioxide, and it has to be brought down to less than 10 gigatons by 2050. Then only will be under 1.5 degrees C. So of course, and we know that in case of India, we have many different things, and its cost of this, technology was talked about. And India's case is, something like now, Madam Soni said something like 450 gigawatt. So that's a huge target. And so I am saying this is the technology which we developed with the financial support of ONGC Energy Center. We have been working for the last 16 years. And so this technology, and one of the things we also said, which I've talked about in my paper, is that, like for example, you convert crude oil into fuels, you get 1 kg crude oil will be 32 megajoules of fuels and 0.2 kg of chemicals. However, if you convert biomass, you get only 6 megajoules of fuel and 0.8 kg of chemicals. In other words, and suppose we do it on the basis of today's requirement. So for example, if you have 100% biomass into fuels, it will be only 10 barrels per second. Whereas 100% biomass will give us 300 per second of chemicals. So that's a huge advantage of converting biomass into fuels and not chemicals. So, and that is all because of this huge number of catalytic processes. Majority of these processes are based on hydrogenation, because by mid-2050s, we will not have any oil, and therefore we will have to go for biomass conversion into chemicals in some of the things. So what we did in ICT, so we have combined solar power with molten salt using copper chlorine cycle. And so what we get hydrogen and also oxygen. And I mentioned you that we can do both hydrogenation and oxidation of biomass, waste biomass, and also convert carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide methanation. So we have all these projects running with us. We have a number of patents. So we have gone from carbon dioxide to methane and hydrocarbons. We also have projects running on other things like methanol and dimethyl ether. And we have in fact signed a contract on dimethyl ether also. So at the same time, the steam reforming, because just now it was said that blue hydrogen will still be important. So steam reforming, so we have several patents and papers on steam reforming of biogas feedstock and the so-called carbon dioxide refinery. We have done this, and several publications we are including patents in this area. So what I'm going to talk about is the thermochemical water splitting of green hydrogen as against the hydrolysis, which people talked about. There are 4 major cycles, and in India there is a lot of work going on sulfur iodine cycle, and another is on copper chlorine cycle. So copper chlorine cycle is the one. We have worked on sulfur iodine also, but copper chlorine cycle, I will tell you. So what advantage we have in this particular technology that we can produce hydrogen at less than $1 per kg. Now, this will be a music to your ears because everybody talked about Godavari biorefineries because they are generating something like 200 tons of carbon dioxide every day. And so that is a very interesting sanction that is the site. We could have gone there, but it happens in all these PSUs. So we can see that this is the plant which I have in ICT, and I can't run a bigger plant on ICT campus. Therefore, I had to go somewhere else. And so you will see this, what is literature reported, and the calculated ICT OAC for 100 tons per day hydrogen cost is 95 cents. Okay, and if you take the oxygen cost something like 10 cents per kg, you can see that is also the valorized. So you can see that even if you double this cost to 2 kg, because even ONGC did not believe it initially, they themselves came and looked at the calculations, what we did, and they realized that yes, this is a very viable technology. And so we are going to go ahead with this project. And what I did, I compared this with literature, 19 reported technologies. Okay, like steam methane reforming, etc., with carbon capture. You see that the cost which is said there, including the capital investment, all these costs are saying, even if you assume that you give the ballpark estimate 2.1.34 and all that. So when we compare with all these 19 technologies, ours is solar plus thermochemical, which can give us 95 cents per kg. So this is very exciting. So, and if they, this afternoon, Dr. Lele also mentioned that he says that it will be something like $150 per kilowatt electrolyzer cost. Whereas Dr. Ramkumar says it will not be less than 1500 kilowatts. So that means there is a price variation because depending on the scale and how it is operated. So obviously, when you have a steam reforming of natural gas, it will be $990 per kilowatt to 150 per kilowatt. And the low carbon fossil hydrogen is in the range of 2.5 to 3. And green hydrogen is supposed to be very good if you could bring it between 1.2 to 2.9 per kg. This is based on 3 different sources from the literature. So the target for solar electricity to be cost competitive, then only this kind of, and everybody talked about the cost of electricity, having electrolyzers being installed for carbon or hydrogen. So to conclude, hydrogen economy can be elegantly intertwined to make many chemicals from waste carbon sources, including biomass and C1 of gases. Green hydrogen will be the savior of the world. There is a need to develop different hydrogen production technologies and to evaluate impact on environment and energy to meet the net zero goal. Biomass should be used for the production of valuable chemicals and materials and not as a source of fuel, notwithstanding the 450 gigawatt target of government of India by 2020. Yes, right now we are blending ethanol, bioethanol. Yes, for some time it is correct, but not anymore. So government of India should adopt hydrogen economy to meet the demands of the Paris Agreement. It can save a lot of foreign exchange and will contribute to the $5 trillion economy. So ICT OEC hydrogen technology is one of the most viable technology and should be part of the national hydrogen mission. With these, I thank everybody. I have been supported by a number of organizations. I would thank ONGC Energy Center, Godavari Biorefinery, UGC and DST, of course, and Tata Chemicals for funding my work. Thank you very much. And so if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yadav, for an insight into the new processes which you have really pioneered and try to bring it to thing in action. I think with paucity of time, maybe we should be able to, we should close this, except that I want to make a sort of a closing remarks. What we have heard from most of the people here is regarding how to take care of the electricity and solar thing. Maybe in this last slide, what Professor Yadav also mentioned, if you compare various technologies, we should have a level playing field for various green-based hydrogen or green hydrogen, whatever you call. I think it's necessary that most of the policy makers really look at these things, and the numbers what Professor Yadav also showed with respect to biomass and what Dr. Ramkumar brought on the front with respect to biomass to hydrogen. I think it needs a level playing field. It's not to say that one against the other. I think these are all complementary to each other. Biomass is also a solar, stored solar energy. I think we need to address these things. I think with this, provided the insight into how India should really look at the Atmanirbhar kind of concepts in terms of bringing in hydrogen production to the front in many of these programs. What is going to happen with the mission mode? Thank you very much, and thank the organizers for having provided me the opportunity to moderate this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.